I'm Frederick Gerten, and I'm the filmmaker.
And I'm Leilani Farha, and I'm the advocate.
And this is Pushback Talks, and we are back. We are out in the air, Leilani, and with the ever-growing audience. I just found out we now have audience in 119 countries. So, I mean, can you guess?
Astonishing.
Who are the new ones?
Oh, you got to give me a region. Come on.
Actually, one country that we should have had, because we weren't there to show Push, in Central America.
In El Salvador.
El Salvador, yes.
We never had someone from El Salvador.
You're welcome, you, the listener out there. And then we have two more countries in Africa. Ivory Coast, I already gave it to you before, but there's also then a big island on the east of Africa.
The Seychelles.
That's very small islands. It's Madagascar. Madagascar, you're also welcome to Pushback Talk. So 119 countries. Leilani, this week's big thing is the Pandora Papers. Journalists together all over the world are breaking news again. Have you seen it?
Oh, yes, I've seen it, and I've been listening to some podcasts about it. Astonishing again. Astonishing. Because for our purposes, or for my purposes, so much of this is about the way real estate and housing is being used by those with power and money.
What is very obvious, I mean, sometimes the journalism coming out of the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, and now the Pandora Papers are about individuals. And of course, the irony is one of the Swedish names showing up here is a hip-hop group. Do you know the name of them? Swedish House Mafia. So Swedish House.
Oh my gosh. So everyone knows.
They're like yes. in the big time. Swedish House Mafia is caught in the Pandora Papers. It's all about wealth management. It's how the richest people on the planet, they have these kind of wealth managers helping them to place their money. And what we can see coming out already now is that they're building a chateau or they're buying a chateau in France or a villa in Santa Monica. It's all of this kind of placing, parking money. And this is, I mean, do you think they're going to live in these houses?
Of course not. No intention. But you know, Frederick, one thing that's interesting is I heard on one podcast I was listening to, they're saying, well, you know, a lot of this is happening in quotes legally because they're just using the structures that exist for them to get their money offshore and then put it somewhere else. But from an international human rights law perspective, it is not legal what they're doing because they're taking away the tax base of countries, and countries are supposed to, under law, use all of the resources that are available to them to ensure people have adequate housing and food and all of these things. So in that way, it's not legal at all. Not just morally bankrupt, it's actually illegal from a human rights point of view.
Yeah. And we certainly have to return back and look more into the what comes out of the Pandora Papers. But today we're going to talk about Turkey. Because Turkey is also then one of these countries where a lot of money has been flooding in. And actually, Turkey is one of the top 10 countries of foreign investment in real estate.
Wow.
So it's really high, and most of the money is coming from Iraq, Iran, Russia, but also from 80 countries around the world. But can you imagine what the impact has on the people, you know, in those countries? So in one of the universities in Istanbul, the prices of a student dorm went up 290% because they're in there. They're just grabbing away apartments and houses. But anyway, we actually have a guest from Turkey, and that's Dilan İpek, who is a student and also an active in the libertarian youth, but also in the Turkish student movement. Now actually sleeping in parks all around Turkey. It's a huge movement. It's a movement that's actually shaking the government and shaming the government. Dilan, welcome to Pushback Talks.
Hello, Frederick and Leilani.
Welcome, Dilan.
What are you doing? It seems like you have a very strong movement going on in Turkey right now.
Yeah, exactly. But, it hasn't just started from September because normally many of the other movements or maybe, as you said, the foreign countries focused on this topic from September, but the economical crisis is going on for many years, and it's also so related to those problems of the state, this coalition state. So, and one part of is the students, because they have to always deal with the problems, but more with the workers, more with the students, more with LGBTIQs, more with women, and we are a part of it.
But this movement, which is now, I've seen reports on that people are sleeping in parks, so students are sleeping in parks, like as a protest action. It seems like it mainly images from Istanbul. You are in Izmir, which is like the third city. It's like the Malmö of Turkey. Well, Malmö is the third city of Sweden, maybe a little bit smaller than Izmir. So you're doing cool stuff in Izmir also.
Yeah, exactly. After this protest has just started, it was so normal for us because, yeah, as you said, we couldn't find any dormitory to stay, and also any scholarship to stay. We have to sleep in the parks, in the street, and it was so radical. It wasn't radical enough for the students because it was so basic and so the basic right. We are talking about only housing. And the crisis, this economical crisis is getting bigger here. But now the government wants us to solve this going to the private dormitories, and also paying more fees, more money there. And we are against it. And we know that as a political subjects, we know that it is so related to the policies of the government for a long time.
I can see the numbers here in rents overall in Turkey. That from the Bahçeşehir University has reports that the rent prices in Istanbul have gone up 51%, and in Ankara and Izmir around 32%. And this is in the middle of the pandemic, where most people actually have lost incomes.
Yes, exactly. And maybe we can underline the sentences for Izmir, because maybe you remember that Izmir had an earthquake last year. And then after this earthquake, thousands of houses demolished, and after rents rose.
Yeah, and I understand that these houses damaged by the earthquake are like a separate part of the housing market, where a lot of refugees from Syria are living, because that's the only place people can live. So also in Istanbul, you can see a lot of homes, but in houses that might fall down the next time there is an earthquake. So it's quite scary.
The earthquake normally was a natural phenomenon, but not was the rent crisis or economical crisis. It wasn't normal or natural. It was a crisis of the government and the capitalist system. So they pushed the people, workers, and students to pay for this crisis. They are pushing us to go to the private schools, only maybe also going back to our homes, and it's so hard, especially for the women students, for the LGBTIQ students. We are going on to we don't want to go back to our families' houses, or we don't want to stay homeless, but we are now more and more political and more united with the other students' movements. And we say that, we're strong together.
Yeah, I can see that you also have support from the unions in many ways, so it's cool. Leilani, this student crisis, it's not only in Turkey. This is something you see all over the world when you look into this as the global director of the Shift.
Absolutely. And we did do, you'll recall, Fredrik, early on a podcast about student housing, different than what we're talking about today in Turkey, where a lot of foreign capital is buying up student housing and turning it into luxury accommodation that students actually can't afford, and it's only for rich families and students who come from rich families. I find it really amazing what you're doing, Dilan, in and across Turkey to really raise your voices Erdogan himself has come out and had to respond, which means you're being the president of Turkey, and it means that you're being very effective, the fact that he felt he had to respond. Now, he has said, I only read what's in the media and I only report what I've read, but he said, hey, look, unlike any previous government, we built dormitories for students. So my question back to you is, okay, so maybe they did build some dormitories, but was it not sufficient? Did they actually take into consideration how many students they needed dormitories for? And what is your movement's response to that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's so good question, Leilani. In Turkey, there are two really important aspects. After this social state has been erased since 80s, now the dormitories were left to the religious dormitories, not the government and formal dormitories. So it was a deliberate capital transfer to the religious dormitories and those religious cliques. And the other problem is there were some dormitories built with build, operate, and transfer method to the capitalists, to the private sector. And, the majority of those dormitories are empty. In fact, and most of them haven't, even though they haven't been opened yet, now we are paying it from our pocket. And, and also the thousands of the students are homeless now. So, and also they are going on to marginalize the students, saying that, don't look those shitty students. They aren't real students. They are fake. He's underlining that, they're political and against me or my government, my coalition government, And so now our friends who attended to the Pride Parade, Pride Month, they also, they can't go their dormitories anymore, and they can't take their scholarships anymore. Many friends from Istanbul, we know that.
I just reading the numbers here that there are a little bit more than 8 million students in Turkey. It's a big country, Turkey. And there are dorms for around a little bit more than 700,000. So it's almost like 7.5 million who don't have a place to stay, or they have to fix it themselves. And of course, people always been fixing it themselves. But I was in Istanbul just before the pandemic and showing Push, and I met with a lot of activists and architects and a lot of very cool people. And I've been walking around the city. But a lot of people told me their own stories. They had been evicted from places that they've been living for cheap. It was like a cool place to live. And then like 5 years later, the same buildings are still empty. So and that's a part of the numbers I gave you in the beginning, this enormous flood of money into Turkey, just placing itself in real estate. They call it foreign investment, but it's actually just foreign parking of money. But that parking of money has a severe effect on a city. And now you, the students of Turkey, are paying the price for rich people in other countries who wants to save their money or hide their money away from their own governments, and they don't want to pay tax in their own countries. But they are actually punishing you and shaking the Turkish society. And this is something... And I think that's the very clear relation to the Pandora Papers, the wealth management. And of course, there is also a relation to the government of your country that is letting these people in. Normally, we would say that the foreign investment will make life go better for people in the country. But this is also a global pattern. We see foreign investment is actually just destroying societies.
Because I work globally, then I have a sense of how people think about this issue of global capital and real estate. And it's still people thinking London, New York, San Francisco, Sydney, Hong Kong. They're not thinking Turkey. And yet, look at the impact. I didn't know when Fredrik gave that statistic that it's one of the top 10 countries receiving foreign capital in this area. I think that should be shocking to us because it's indicative of what Frederick said. This is systematic. It is now a structure in society, period. It is a structure. It's used, the flow of capital into real estate. And what the students and Dylan, you and your friends and colleagues represent is the push back to say, hello, we are out here. And this is the impact. Students not being able to get the education to then go on and live a good life and contribute to society. I have one question for you. You mentioned, Dylan, that now you're starting to work together. So when the student movement erupted in September, like this sleeping in the parks, was it not organized, or had it been organized across the different cities?
No, it wasn't organized. Yeah. Our youth organization just started it in Izmir, and in our action we had a press briefing and on the right to housing, and we said that we want more free dormitories and raise in the student scholarship. And then sure, it wasn't only a problem of and generally this dormitory problems are a big problem generally in the small cities, small towns. And maybe, you have a choice to find in Istanbul, maybe bigger houses, maybe you can share with 5 friends, that's all, but not in the small cities. Also in other cities like Istanbul, Ankara, Mersin, Hatay, also friends, many different students and organizations had some park protests.
I think it's amazing and extremely underreported from from the world. I mean, overall, you are so many brave young people in Turkey that keep doing this, and of course, you don't do it because you want to be heroes. You do it because you need a place to stay. It's kind of simple in some way. It's very simple, but still, it's you are confronting not only your government. You're confronting a global system that has put people's interest aside, and the right to a decent home, and that's a struggle worthy to follow. So what are you doing now? What is your next step as a movement? Can you see where this will end? How will you move on?
In January, they will start to talk about economical budget for the we will have a new year budget, and we will want more budget for the dormitories and for our education rights, and also for the free public universities, and also underlining that we are against those neoliberal education policies. This is one of the biggest problem for universities, because we want academic democratic universities, and now the more pressure and provocative policies of the governments is rising. And no, as you said, Frederick, it is so easy for us to say that, really, we need to stay in a house. We need some healthy food, the water, and this is right. So we will go on our protests not only for those budget months, and also I think economical crisis is also so big, and we can have some deals with the workers, with women movement, and with LGBTIQs.
I really like the framing of just, you're very simple in your framing, which is these things are human rights. Food, shelter, etc. I think that's very powerful, and I think linking it to the budget is very powerful as well, because governments have to spend in ways that contribute to human rights, not that undermine human rights. And it in Turkey, as I understand it, not only is there this issue of the flow of global capital into the country, but the government has been using construction as a way to push forward economic growth of the country. That's what they say. And a lot of governments do this. They put a lot of emphasis in their GDP, their gross domestic product, on construction and housing. And it's not actually benefiting the people who most need it. So there's a drive for construction, and then these places stay empty, or because the people who are engaged, I'm not talking about corrupt capital, I'm talking about average people with a little money, and they get into construction of housing. It's expensive to do that, and then they have their own debts, and so they want to rent, but they rent at prices that students, for example, can't afford. So the budget is very key, because the government is basing its economic life in an area that is damaging young people, LGBTQ, women, all the groups that you've mentioned. So go. I think targeting that budget is important.
Thank you. They have to put maximum limit for the rents. This is a must.
Yes, rent control, yes.
I was thinking of the Italian-American economist Mariana Mazzucato. She sometimes explains the modern capitalism, and that's also what we have in the film Push, where Saskia Sassen says, she talks about the extractive side of capitalism. So it's more extracting value and leaving a lot of emptiness behind. The classical idea of capitalism is that you invest, you produce, you create somebody will make more money, but everybody will gain in some way. But now you're extracting value and giving very little back. And this is very clear here. There is a lot of money floating in, but it's actually just sucking out values and leaving the people of Turkey, not only the students, also ordinary families. I mean, imagine the number of refugees and all of that, because you're surrounded with wars and crisis. It's a very tough situation, and then on top of that, earthquake, and not to mention the pandemic. So you have some enemies out there.
It depends, really. Also they are saying us, they are enemies, but we are the people. We are the public, and we are students, and we don't have any capital. We don't have any palaces. We don't have any villas. And when they are living in their palaces with thousands of empty rooms, we should always ask for whom you are building these buildings when we are out, when we are homeless.
Absolutely.
Sure they are our enemies.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also this economic model that is, and it's almost like faceless capital in some way, because when you look around in Izmir or Istanbul or Ankara, you see a lot of new shiny houses, and you don't know who lives there, or you don't know who owns it. It's like it's very anonymous. But I think what we should keep looking for is the pattern that rich people are using this kind of wealth management, the tax havens, and they move around money in a very quick speed, and then we don't really know who owns what. But you feel the effect of them placing money.
One of the things, Dilan, that I've been thinking about when Fredrik and I started talking about students and their experiences with respect to housing is, you are in the best position to push back, in my opinion, because unlike us old people, and I put myself in the old people category, you are not part of any systems, and you did not contribute to the system that exists. This was put on you. You haven't been part of it. And it's when I was listening to dear Greta Thunberg at the Youth Environment Conference. She was giving her blah, blah, blah speech. And only people who are outside of the system can give a speech like that. And I really felt it. Even me, I'm an advocate. I'm a strong advocate for the right to housing. I'm more in the system. I was the UN rapporteur. I'm talking to governments all the time. It puts me in a different position. I'm not in a blah, blah, blah position. But you, young people, can push because you have such a strong position. This is a world that was created by others, but you're being forced to live in it. And so your voices are so important. I really think when change comes, it will come from young people and students, because you have still the imagination, the dream, the ability to see a different world. So I'm right here behind you, really encouraging you. I really need the young people.
Thank you.
No, but it's true. I think that it's our job to support the young people. And I think there is a lot of hope in the new generations coming now. Greta is a great inspiration, and a lot of the people that she works with. And what you do also now in Turkey is also a very strong inspiration for movements around the world. And we can see this happening in many other countries, that the students are taking the lead. And we should also remember that students are the future leaders of a country. So I think also governments should treat students with respect. Don't tear gas them. Don't hit them. Because this is actually the future lays. To the leaders of Turkey, be careful with your students, because you will need them in the future, and give them some roof over their heads.
I love it. I love it. Season 3, episode 2. It's really good. We have very powerful beginning to season 3, beginning with our friends in Berlin and now moving to the activists in Turkey. It's amazing.
Time for us to kind of open up, because now Twitter has this feature where you can actually talk to each other.
Go live, yeah.
Yeah, so we should do that, and then we'll invite all of you listeners to send in questions and talk to us. Could be fun.
You know what we haven't mentioned, but we'll do it. We'll do an episode. China and Evergrande. I think we mentioned it in our last episode, but there's a lot to talk about with China.
Yeah, we need to find somebody who can explain this story, because it's huge. It's huge. It's so much money.
Speaking of money.
Yes, this is something people don't really understand, that we are doing this podcast without money. And that's fine in some way, but it's also not totally sustainable, because I'm running a very small company who produces documentary films, and we actually have cost. We have to pay our rents and all that stuff. So if you want, you can support our podcast. Would be really nice. Leilani, how can people support us?
They can support us by going to our Patreon account, which you can reach wherever you download the podcast. There's a little link there. You click on it, you look for Pushback Talks, and you can give. And even, well, Frederick and I like friends, so even $1, €1, £1, a lira helps.
Yeah.
Lira doesn't help, you know?
No, lira doesn't help. Okay, it's worth nothing.
Just kidding. It doesn't help.
No, send a lira. It's fine. I'm really happy to
maybe you can put it on the museum. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we will. Anyway, and I'm looking. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Always a pleasure. And
till next time.
See
talk
you.
soon.
Bye.
See you next time.
Pushback Talks is produced by WG Film. To watch Push, visit pushthefilm.com. You can also support us by becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/pushbacktalks. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.